Hi, I'm Tracy Ibrahim. I am a therapist and the Chief Compliance Officer of NOCD. And I'm actually here putting together for you a follow-up to a Pure O workshop that I did the other day. There were a lot of questions and I wasn't able to get to all of the questions. So I thought I'd take some time to answer more of those questions for you right now. And so let's just jump right in and get that going. How can you tell the difference between a reasonable action and a compulsion? Well, that's a great question. A lot of times, just the act of trying to figure that out is a compulsion. Something that is a reasonable action is something that makes sense at that moment, at that time, something that everybody would do in that situation, versus something that you are doing compulsively, right? That's the obvious answer. How do you know the difference? Well, if you start doubting and trying to figure it out, I will usually write that off as a compulsion and say, stop trying to figure it out, leave it there. Um, so for instance, if it's asking multiple times the same question, asking multiple people the same question to find out an answer, something like that, that would be compulsive, say, reassurance seeking. So versus, let's just say you're asking something reasonable like, hey, you live in this city and state. How do you like it? And maybe you ask three different people how they like living there because you're thinking of moving there. Well, that sounds reasonable, right? So that's sort of a good example of where you could see the difference. And if you can't tell the difference and you're trying to figure it out, stop. It's probably a compulsion. All right. When you have moral scrupulosity, you can convince yourself that you're a bad person. Then refocusing your attention or ignoring or avoiding mental compulsions and not dealing with it by neutralizing, confessing, or seeking reassurance serves as proof that you're really a bad person. How do you deal with that? Well, you just described a whole lot of compulsions. So, anything having to do with OCD, first of all, important to note is you are not your OCD. You don't come up with the intrusions that you get. So feeling bad or feeling like a bad person because of any intrusive thoughts, whether they're scrupulous or taboo or any harm, anything at all, we have to be nice to ourselves. We are not bad people because we have a mental illness. So that's number one. Number two, you mentioned refocusing your attention, ignoring, avoiding, not dealing, trying to neutralize thoughts, confessing, or seeking reassurance. Those are just all compulsions. And again, you would want to avoid those. So you would want to sit with uncertainty about whatever you're feeling scrupulous about and not do any of those things. All right. Am I familiar with any instances of OCD only appearing in adulthood and no signs until then? Yes. That is known as late onset OCD. It's still OCD, same OCD as everyone else has. Some people get it as at very young childhood. Some people get it in their teens. And yeah, some people do get it as an adult. So that is totally something that can happen. And it's treated the same way, no matter when we find it. Okay. I do a lot of thought stopping and avoidance when intrusive thoughts come up. Scrolling on my phone, doing anything to avoid thinking the thought. If I do something like math or Sudoku to try to put focus elsewhere, can that be considered avoiding or thought stopping compulsions? Great question. And so let's start with thought stopping is not a thing, right? We can't stop our thoughts because they already arrived by the time you found out they were there. And there's no thought blocking. We can't do any of those things. Neutralizing, that's just, where we try and replace a bad thought with a good thought. Again, that's just all those things, right, are all compulsions. What you're talking about, like, well, what if I take my focus, my present moment focus, and I put it on something other than my ruminations, my mental compulsions that are happening, that would happen in Puro or in any format of OCD? where we have stuff going on in our head, that is actually a great non-engagement strategy. I tell people to do that all the time. Avoidance compulsions doesn't just mean avoidance. It's, avoiding a place because you find it triggering, avoiding a thing because you believe that something bad will happen, something like that type of avoidance. I'm going to avoid going to my family's house because I'm afraid that maybe I am going to cause harm to somebody, something that would be compulsive avoidance versus redirecting your attention, which is not avoidance. That's actually exactly what we want you to do. So doing a complex math problem, absolutely. Sudoku, you can't ruminate while you're doing those things. Let's see. All right. The morning is the worst for me because I dream about my compulsions and obsessions. Then I wake up in the morning already in heightened anxiety and spend hours in the morning ruminating. What can I do to prevent this morning cycle? A lot of people wake up from OCD dreams, is what I call them. Remember, OCD is in our brain, and our brain is still there when we are asleep, just like it is when we're awake. So OCD content can happen all day, all night, anytime, and there's absolutely no difference as to it showing up when we're asleep versus awake. But just like it triggers your anxiety when it happens in the day, you sometimes wake up with heightened anxiety. What you need to do is the part where I read, and spend hours in the morning ruminating. So what can you do to prevent the morning cycle? As soon as you wake up and you realize you have heightened anxiety and you're like, oh man, those dreams really sucked. Get up. Don't ruminate. Don't get up and go on with your routine that you would normally do. Don't engage in rumination. Why did that happen? What does it mean? Why did I do? All of the things you ruminate about when you wake up this way. And instead, what would you rather be doing? What would you be doing if you had woken up from a pleasant dream? You would maybe wash your face, then brush your teeth and get dressed. And maybe you're going to make breakfast and be very mindful about your breakfast. And maybe wow, I'm sipping coffee and it tastes great. And it has, hazelnut creamer, which is my favorite. And I love that I'm eating scrambled eggs, and aren't they delightful? See, instead of spacing out and allowing the rumination to happen. Okay, in terms of using ERP to treating mental compulsions, how do you avoid a whack-a-mole situation where you desensitize one obsession only for another one to take its spot? All right, so ERP for mental compulsions, which is also for physical compulsions, we use ERP. The goal is not to desensitize a particular obsession or a particular theme. The goal of ERP is to teach you a set of tools for how to disengage from doing compulsions when they come up. So for instance, I have multiple themes of OCD. So I don't just work, say, on one, like my contamination OCD, and then hope that another format of OCD doesn't show up, because I also have harm OCD. I also have multiple forms, themes of OCD, and I treat them all the same. So no matter what's coming up, the goal isn't to desensitize. The goal really is to learn how to let those things exist in the background and not engage with them. Sitting in uncertainty, like, yeah, sure, maybe, okay, I'm going to just go on with my day and do what I need to do. So very important that we realize that, because a lot of people think like, oh, I'm having my whatever scrupulosity OCD treated right now. Like, no, you're having your OCD treated right now. OCD does not show up differently in your brain based on your theme. It's the same. So you use the same tools. And that's what's great about ERP, is that you can apply it to everything, even when you're whack-a-moling through your themes, which most people do end up whack-a-moling through a set of themes over time. All right. All right. Some of these are sort of the exact same answer I already gave. All right. I know I've done the figuring things in my head out so often it's affecting my work as far as trouble focusing on tasks. It starts as soon as I wake up, different themes. Are there ERP words I can say to refocus? So, ERP very specifically is talking about a two-part process, which is exposures, and then response prevention, which is not engaging in those things that are that we are fearful of. So, in terms of words that you can say that would be part of ERP, we would be talking about something like response prevention messages or RPMs. So, things that help you stay in uncertainty, but also not engage. So, it would be something like, let's just say it's, um, I'm going to freak out at work and, I don't know, scream and light the building on fire. Let's just say that's what it is. And it's going through your head and you're at work. You could say, yeah, maybe not. I'll deal with that if and when it happens. Okay, well, right now I'm just doing my work. So those would be response prevention messages, like, sure, anything could happen, maybe, but it's going to keep you focused on what it is that you're doing. There are no magic words that make it quiet down and go away. OCD is treatable, it's manageable, but we can't erase it. We cannot cure it. So the goal is, how do I stay focused on what I'm doing while this happens in the background? How can you explain to family, friends, and loved ones what OCD is like? It seems very strange to people who do not know what it is like. True, right? People are like, just stop doing that. You're like, oh yeah, wow, I hadn't thought of that yet. You're a genius. I'll just stop now. First of all, I'd say everyone's different. Some people are going to understand, some people aren't going to understand. You're going to have some people be supportive, some aren't. But there's a lot of different ways. NOCD has a lot of different blogs and posts that maybe you could share with somebody. There's a really good one that was written by our CEO, Stephen Smith, and it's called, if I'm not mistaken, something like how to describe OCD to a loved one, something along those lines, very close to that. And it's spot on. It talks about, like, this is what OCD feels like. I love that one. It's in our NOCD blogs. But, maybe you have a particular theme of OCD and you can find one of our blogs that sort of explain what that is. And maybe you could, email that or talk to somebody while reading through it together. So those are some examples. All right. Why does an actual emergency feel different than an OCD emergency? Like, I would react in a healthy way if there was an actual fire. Well, interesting thing is that we get the same response in our brain and body that we get when we get an OCD trigger that we get during a regular emergency. The difference is some of them are logical and some of them are illogical, right? So if the fire alarm goes off in the building, you're going to get, oh, whoa, right? Your amygdala in your brain goes off and it's like emergency, and it drops chemicals into your body, and you get chemicals and you get hormones and you get cortisol and you get adrenaline and you react, and you know what to do when a fire alarm goes off. You get up and you run, right? You run outside. That makes sense. But when it goes off and it's like, oh my gosh, if you don't do that magical mental ritual, your whole family will die today in a crash. That's not reasonable, right? It feels the same though. You're going to get the same emergency alarm going off and the chemicals to react. The difference is that it doesn't make sense for us to do a magical ritual to keep bad things from happening, because again, that's magical and not real. We would just do that every day and nothing bad would ever happen. Okay. Let's see. What do you do when each choice of a decision is going to cause an OCD rumination episode? It feels like I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Each option of the decision I know is going to give me an OCD exacerbation, and if I usually choose the lesser of two evils. I feel trapped. Okay. Let's start with, we never want to avoid things that are triggering, because most people are triggered by regular things in life as you go through life, right? Things are just happening. Somebody says something. What did that mean? What did, all the things that can go off in your head when you're somebody who has OCD. And so, first of all, we're not going to want to avoid those situations. When you want to be prepared for them. ERP prepares you for those situations. You fall into a situation where, you were triggered, you would normally fall into rumination, and instead you are going to work with non-engagement responses, using response prevention messages, helping yourself stay in uncertainty instead of getting sucked down the rumination station. As I talked about in the Pure O workshop, rumination can't happen without while your your focus is actually elsewhere. You have to space out. You have to allow rumination to happen. It can't just happen while you're doing a math problem. It's not going to be happening while you're reading from a book and singing, lyrics out loud. So it's a choice. We don't always mean to fall into rumination, but something ERP does for us is help us recognize when we have and what we can do to pull ourselves out and put our focus elsewhere. This one's nice and short. So you're just supposed to respond like you don't care, kind of, yeah, actually. We're really just saying, just don't respond at all, right? Don't respond. So I have a bunch of themes of OCD, as I mentioned. I have harm OCD, I have suicidal OCD, right? So when it's like, oh, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, then I'm just like, so I'm making tacos for my family for dinner, and I've got a spatula, and I'm stirring up the ingredients. So it's not that I care, I don't care, I'm just leaving it there. It's not engaging in it. All of those things I'm sure are possible. Yes, maybe I'm going to whatever, or, poison my family, or whatever is being said in my head because of OCD is going on and on and on. So yeah, kind of just leaving it there. So kind of like responding like you don't care. Absolutely. All right. What is thought action fusion? I've heard this and NERS mentioned in some groups. I'll explain both. High level overview. Thought action fusion is where we get a thought. Well, because I have this thought, this feeling, this image, this urge, this, you name it, it's going to make it happen or make it more likely to happen. So for example, when I'm on a plane, I always, without fail, I sit down and I immediately start getting thoughts like, what if you start freaking out? What if you start screaming? What if you open the emergency exit door while you are mid-flight? And then I'm like, oh no, if you have those thoughts and then you start worrying that you're really going to do it, oh no, I have to stop these thoughts. Otherwise, I am going to start screaming and open the exit door. That would be thought action fusion, assuming that thoughts, images, urges, those sorts of things turn into an action. So because I'm aware of thought action fusion, I get those thoughts and I just sit down and I don't worry about it. And I just let those thoughts carry out. And so far, obviously, I haven't opened an emergency exit, luckily. Otherwise, I'd be famous for all the wrong reasons. In terms of NERS, those are non-engagement responses. Those are responses that you do instead of engaging in rumination or other compulsions. And I gave examples of those earlier. Like, wow, you know what? Anything's possible. And you know what? I'm just going to go on with my day and do the things that I care about right now. I am not going to get all caught up in this hot mess right now that is going on. I acknowledge that I feel anxious right now. I'm not going to try to solve it or why it's happening or anything else like that. I have harm OCD and I worry about acting on the thoughts, though I don't want to. Well, there you go. Thought action fusion. I just explained that. And imagine if it were real. Like every time you got a thought that it was going to happen, I would be thinking about winning the lottery all day. And then I would win the lottery over and over all day. Notice that it's only negative when it comes to OCD. Never is it like, you're going to be amazing. You're going to save lives today. You are going to play with fluffy kittens. It's always something terrible. You're going to freak out. You're going to harm yourself. You're going to drive off the road. You're going to, right? It's always bad. Okay. What's the difference between overthinking and OCD? How would I know I'm not reflecting on my character versus ruminating? OCD isn't just overthinking. OCD has components that are overthinking, which we call rumination. OCD is an entire disorder that has other multiple components to it. So if you have intrusive fears, intrusive thoughts, intrusive images, intrusive urges, and all of those things, and now you're ruminating about those things, and this is happening a certain amount of time per day, and it's distressing, and you have to meet criteria for it to become OCD. A lot of people overthink. There's people who are worriers, and they overthink all the time. There's people trying to make the best decision, the perfect decision. There's people who are perfectionists that overthink. So it's not always OCD, and OCD is more than overthinking. So I hope that helps answer that. All right. Let's see what else we got here. How do you deal with having expectations for treatment like ERP to work from the very first attempt? Does this take a lot of time for people? Is it common for other people to expect it to work immediately? You know what? That is a valid and a good question. First of all, there is no therapy that works immediately. None. Not for any problem that you have. Is there anything that you do it once and it is solved? That would be amazing. So you, as somebody with OCD, we get our brains trained to react in a compulsive fashion when we have our OCD fears triggered. So it takes some time, not a long time, but some time to retrain our brain that when these things are triggered, these fears come up, these thoughts come up, these images, that they're not as serious as we used to think they were. So there's not a reason for us to actually do those compulsions that we used to think were necessary. Compulsions are also called safety behaviors because we think we're doing them to be safe or reduce harm or reduce risk. It does take time and patience. And I assure you that there are plenty of scandalous options out there in the world that aren't real that say, hey, take this supplement, or, come to my weekend workshop, solve OCD, or whatever, do this thing real quick and it'll solve it. Don't you think we would all do that? We would. But I can tell you that once you get over the hump and you get yourself going and it all makes sense to you, it's like a downhill from there. Much, much easier. Downhill being an easier ride. It's not an uphill battle. It's downhill. So as somebody who's been staying well, just using ERP, I went through ERP about 20 years ago, and I have been doing great for the past 20 years, but I had to put the work in up front, just like everybody else does. And then it becomes less and less work, and then it just becomes sort of second nature. I don't really have to think much at all. I just go through my days and I automatically do ERP without thinking because that's my new reaction. That's what I've been doing for years. So put in the work, it's worth it. How do you manage magical thinking when your brain tells you that something you may or may not do might somehow affect the outcome of some unrelated event or situation? Well, when it comes to OCD treatment, you learn that we have a lot of thoughts. We think a lot of things, right? OCD doesn't tend to be logical, right? So if I asked you logically, like, oh, so if you just go ahead and do those magical rituals, but maybe you're doing it to, let's just say you're doing it to keep a family member alive, does that mean that person will live forever? Will this person become a vampire who or a zombie? Like, will they actually live forever because you're doing this magical ritual? Of course not. Everybody has to die sometime, I guess, except zombies and vampires if they're real. And in terms of, harm, like, let's just say you're like, harm will not happen, or this is going to be a good situation only if I do this. Logically that that's not real. Bad things are going to happen. Unfortunate tragedies happen no matter how many magical rituals we do. And ERP helps you learn that by not doing your magical rituals and finding out good and bad things will happen whether or not you do that. What's the best way to continue exposures when you don't want to or feel like you can't? This is where you have to push yourself. You do the exposures and you do the response prevention. At the end of the day, avoiding compulsions is the most important part. So sometimes, like, if somebody's really sick, like I had COVID for a while a couple of years ago, and I just felt like I just didn't even have energy to like walk to the bathroom. And my OCD was like on fire in my brain. And I was like, I'm going to give myself a break for today. I'm not going to do a bunch of exposures. I'm too tired. But you know what I'm not going to slip up on? I'm going to stay on top of my response prevention. I'm going to make sure that I am going to not fall into compulsions. So if there's a day or two that you need off, you're sick, things are going on, just make sure you're not doing those compulsions. But you've got to do the exposures, with your therapist initially to help train your brain to learn that things are not as serious as your brain is telling you that. Have we ever used spiritual practices such as meditation as a form of healing? No, not for OCD specifically. OCD, there is no particular research supporting that meditation will solve your OCD. But I'm not saying that meditation is not okay. Meditation is fine for people that do meditation for other reasons, but yeah, it's not in relation specifically to OCD. No. Let's see. What if you start doubting if something actually did happen when you're pretty sure it didn't? Well, that would be, it could be real event OCD. It could be false memory OCD. Don't try to figure it out is my number one advice, because if you start trying to figure it out and you're going to go over and over trying to review mentally, oh my gosh, did it happen? Let me remember. Let me see. What about? And then maybe you're going to try and ask and remember and look at things and try. The more you try, actually, the more confused you get, and you can then start to create false memories and then fall into false memory OCD, and nobody wants that. So what I would say is, if you start doubting something and you're not sure if it happened, say, yeah, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I'm going to go on with my day now. Don't try to figure it out. OCD is called the doubting disorder because it adds doubt to everything all the time. When does being present become a compulsion? If I try to distract myself from the rumination with an audiobook or something, is there a point that it stops being a healthy choice? No, is the answer to that. Being present is not a compulsion. Being present is being present. That is where you should be. And if you are fully present, you won't even be ruminating. So that would be perfect. Distraction in terms of I'm listening to an audiobook that I enjoy, or I'm reading. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be doing things you enjoy in life and not compulsing. So those are perfect choices. Okay. My boyfriend's been my biggest trigger for my OCD, but he's my favorite person to be around. How do you manage that and still be happy around someone that makes you go into a spiral? So it's, again, we're not going to want to avoid. So let's just say you have relationship OCD, maybe because that's why your boyfriend maybe is your trigger. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Whatever reason that this boyfriend is triggering you, I would suggest you go through ERP therapy to learn how that works. So like I live with my child and husband, And sometimes OCD gets triggered and it's like, you're going to smother him in his sleep with a pillow and this is going to happen. And, I just let those thoughts be there. I let that, whatever. I go on with my day. I go to sleep. I lay there. I'm like, yeah, maybe. But right now I'm just going to sleep. It's when you start ruminating, oh no, what if this comes true? You're the reason, right? You're going into a spiral is because you're compulsing. If you were just triggered by your boyfriend, but you just show up anyway and you just sort of let those things be there without labeling them, deciding that they're bad or dangerous or that it's a problem, then you would be doing a whole lot better. Let's see. Do you ever feel guilty when the thoughts don't bother you as much? Like, why am I not bothered by this gross or scary thought? So a lot of people get that. Sometimes they fall into what we call the meta OCD theme, freaking out. Oh my gosh, what does that mean that I don't care about this? What does it mean that I'm not grossed out by this anymore? That's just a rumination. So if those thoughts are not bothering you as much as they used to and you're not guilty, congratulations. You probably did really good ERP, and that's excellent. So when I get thoughts of, oh, you're going to, push your daughter down the stairs, or you're going to throw yourself out a window, or you're going to, well, like I mentioned earlier, smother your husband with a pillow in his sleep. I don't feel bad about that. They don't bother me. I'm used to having intrusive thoughts and urges and all of the things and images, and I just leave it there. And there's nothing wrong with that. That just means I've done excellent ERP. So, and I don't engage. So good for you. All right. How do you cope with urges part of OCD, especially for harm themes? It feels so scary, like it can actually happen. So we deal with it the same way. Just like we have intrusive thoughts, we can get intrusive images, intrusive urges. I described one earlier, like when I'm on a plane. It feels like I feel my body feeling like I'm going to start screaming, just like, ah. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to, grab my roller suitcase and just smack somebody with it, or something like that. I feel it. But again, I talked earlier also about thought action fusion. Just because you feel it, even if it's an urge versus a thought or an image, it's an urge, doesn't mean that that's going to happen. I'm sure you've had intrusive urges for a long time, and I'm sure none of them have turned into an actual thing. I've never actually smacked somebody over the head with my suitcase. I've never actually started screaming in a theater like I constantly think that I'm going to do, in terms of my feeling says I'm going to do it, but I know I'm not going to do it, and I just sit with the possibility. Sure, that could happen. I guess we'll see what happens. And we're not puppets that are controlled by OCD, luckily. Otherwise, we'd be doing all kinds of nutsy stuff all the time, right? Nobody would want to do that. All right. In some of your examples, such as what if I throw myself out the window, the thing that one is obsessing about has not yet happened. So if I start moving toward the window, deal with it then. Often for me, I obsess about something I'm not sure if I've done, such as had a bad thought and didn't challenge it adequately. I worry I might need to ask God for forgiveness. In reality, some of the time I do have bad thoughts and I need forgiveness. And okay, so basically, what would we give any different advice for worrying about things in the past as opposed to potential future situations? Yes, absolutely. So first of all, there's no special handbook on, well, if you have a bad thought, you have to do X, Y, and Z to, now have a good thought or, have redemption for that thought. Everybody has intrusive thoughts, even people without OCD. Everybody gets offensive thoughts and, harm thoughts, if you will. So if something's in the past, I leave it. I don't try to figure it out. I don't try to solve it. You don't have a time machine. You can't go back. You also can't go forward. So that's where I like to stay right here in this moment. So what I would say to you is Don't try to go back and be like, oh no, like I need to ask for forgiveness because I had this thought. And now because you're going into this whole rumination cycle and trying to figure those things out. I don't know. Like you said, what if I'm not sure if I did this thing, or maybe I did have a bad thought. Maybe I didn't challenge it adequately. Well, there's no book on how to challenge thoughts adequately, right? There's no handbook on the way to do that. That's just clearly some intrusive thoughts on you're supposed to solve this in a certain way and you don't know if you did, so you better solve it. It's that intrusive doubt of OCD. So we need to leave that. If it's in the past, leave it. Yeah, maybe I did. Yeah, maybe there's things. Yeah, maybe those things happened. Oh well, today is today and I'm going to deal with today. Okay. Is it possible for the thoughts to switch focus, such as instead of what if I hurt someone else to what if someone hurts me? What if he cheats to what if I cheat? What if I have a disease to what if my child has a disease? Yes, all things are possible. It's OCD is like an equal opportunity jerk. So it'll attack anything, every direction, all the time. So like that's what I like to say is with OCD, everything is possible all the time, no matter what it is. This is what OCD would like you to believe. Just like you can magically stop bad things from happening, or oh no, now somebody might hurt me. Oh no, what if I might hurt somebody? Every single possibility is possible for OCD to harass you with doubt. Few questions on how to handle different themes of OCD. And I just want to sort of answer those in a bundle and say we deal with all themes of OCD exactly the same. There are things we cannot solve with 100% certainty. Most things in life, existential OCD, all of the things we cannot solve for the past, the future, the what happens later, what could happen, what might happen, what did happen, but all the stuff we can't solve for it. So we leave it alone with sure, anything's possible. And I'm not going to be able to get 100% certainty. Most people don't have 100% certainty about anything, except some basic stuff. Like maybe you know who you are, you know your name, you know where you live, but you don't know most things. Most things are uncertain, and uncertainty makes people feel anxious, but that's just what we got to do is sit with uncertainty. How do you find hope in OCD? I feel having OCD has made me miss out so much on life. And that's true. OCD can be so isolating. It's absolute awful disorder. You can find community, first of all, find treatment so that you can learn how to get back out there and make sure that you're not isolating, because that is awful when you feel alone. So please reach out. We have a community at NOCD. For people even people who are not receiving treatment from us, we have an app that you can download for free and be part of our OCD community and talk to people there. And for people who are members of our NOCD therapy program, we also have many, many support groups. And I run a couple of those with regarding taboo themed OCD. So that's another way to go out and feel less alone and feel like you're part of a community of people and feel understood and heard. All right. Are there any types of medications that can help? So medication is outside of my scope of practice, but I can tell you that if you go to the IOCDF website, the International OCD Foundation, and you do a little search for medications, they have a list on there that will talk about evidence-based medications and doses that are used to treat OCD. Everybody's different. Medications help some people they don't help. Everyone's different. Don't try to find yourself online in somebody else. We all have our own genetics. For instance, medications don't work for me, so I only use ERP to stay well. But I also know a lot of people who medications are helping quite a bit. Even on medication, you still need to be able to learn how to manage your OCD. It's not going to erase it for you. You're still going to need to get your ERP on board. Do you have to keep doing ERP forever, or is it time limited? So you don't have to do ERP forever in terms of setting up specific exposures on a regular basis. But you do need to do the RP part, or the doing your best to stay out of compulsions. We have full control over some things in life, but compulsions are something we accidentally fall into sometimes, no matter how awesome you are at doing ERP. I fall into them sometimes. The difference is you catch yourself and you move forward very quickly. And the secret sauce, as Dr. McGrath likes to call it, is response prevention. So you will do that forever. You get triggered, you don't compulse. You get triggered, you don't compulse. Life offers a lot of natural exposures. So as an example, I was out at dinner yesterday, and then karaoke started up at this restaurant. I didn't know it was happening. Some guy came over and sat down and like shook my hand. His hand was very moist and clammy. And my contamination OCD was like off the charts. It was just like, ugh, and I won't even tell you the things that I was imagining were on his hand. So I just use that as what we call an in vivo exposure, or just a natural in life, it's happening to you right now exposure. And I just said, well, you know what? I'm not going to go wash my hand. I'm not going to wipe off my hand. I'm just going to do all the usual things I would do. I just kept eating, drinking, doing my thing. And then when I got home, it was like acting up, like, don't forget to wash your hands, that you shook the hand. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let this go a little longer. So I changed into my pajamas without washing my hands. And so I just sort of like built an exposure in, because I was already triggered. I wasn't planning that exposure, but it happened. So I went ahead and did my response prevention, and just went with it. Those are the kinds of things where I'll do exposures, forever. But I didn't set that up. I wasn't like, go shake the hand of a stranger who has a moist, warm hand. Like, that would be an intentional exposure. You don't have to do those forever, but yeah, life will make that happen. Okay, what if you have bodily sensations and they convince you that you actually want the thought to happen, when in reality you're repulsed by it? Those are intrusive feelings or intrusive sensations. And only you can convince yourself that that means you want it to happen. When you're saying here, I'm repulsed by it, this means you're engaging with it. So if you get a body sensation, groanal responses, or an urge, or whatever it is, and it's going against your values, like, let's just say I'm just going to make this up. Maybe you're walking by somebody and it's like, you're going to grab that person's butt. And you're like, oh no. And then maybe you get a feeling in your body, a groanal response, some sort of feeling. And you go, oh no. Like, what does that mean? What you need to do is not try to figure out, like, just, yep, people get feelings. Yep, people have sensations. Whatevs. I'm going to go on with my day. So it's again that you're engaging with it. Whoa, no, I had a feeling when this thing happened. What does it mean? This is where we're trying to solve for certainty, and that is certainty that we cannot have. OCD will never let you keep certainty, even if you were to find it, by the way, because it sucks. So that's why we don't bother to find it. All right. Let's see. Not a question, but something I remind myself is from a webinar with Patrick McGrath, when he said, if compulsions worked, we'd prescribe them to everyone. That's very true. Never have I prescribed a compulsion. The more compulsions you do, the louder your OCD is. And when you starve it of compulsions, it actually starts to quiet down and the intensity comes down. That's the truth. So there you go. All right. I struggle with thinking I'm always lying or subconsciously lying. I mental review so hard, which ultimately leads to confessing. How do I learn to trust myself and separate true values and feelings versus who OCD is telling me I am and the desires I'm suppressing? And again, this is you trying to figure something out. So you're mentally reviewing which is a compulsion, trying to solve, am I lying? Am I subconsciously lying? I don't know if I'm lying. Like, you're not giving yourself a liar's test. You're just getting more and more confused, trying to solve something. And then you mentioned, then you confess, and confessing is a compulsion. All of those things are just feeding this and making it a whole lot worse. So best that when you get the thought, am I lying or subconsciously lying, you go, you know what? That's possible. But right now, I'm not going to try to figure this out. I'm just going to go on with whatever it was I was trying to do before that hit me, that doubt that felt very much like I needed to solve it, but I'm not going to. I'm getting better with using ERP, but my contamination ones are the worst. Any advice for extreme fear of germs and disease? Yes. Same thing as what I've been saying. So contamination definitely is one that it's my ride or die theme. I like to call it. It's always been by my side for many, 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 many years. And at the end of the day, it sounds like you're fearing, like, what if this is yucky germs on me? What if I get a disease? What if this leads to, it's a lot of what ifing. And so I like to stay in the moment and go, yeah, okay. Kind of like what I said a minute ago when I had to shake that guy's hand that was very moist and warm. Of course, my brain, my contamination OCD was just on fire with the amounts of things. And I'm like, it's soaking into the pores of your skin. And then, it's going on in the background, but I'm not engaging with it. I'm just letting it play out. And again, then it was like, I told you, then I put on my pajamas. I still hadn't washed my hands. And then I allowed myself to wash my hands before I ended up going to bed and brushing my teeth and doing the things that I do to get ready for bed. Because I was like, at this point, I had already had my contamination hand going for a solid couple of hours. And so I'm laying in bed and it's like, now you have that moist, warm, whatever germs and diseases on your pajamas. And I was like, cool. I'm just trying to go to bed right now. So that's what I'm going to do. And if I get diagnosed with a disease, I'll deal with that if and when it happens, right? We don't need to we'll deal with that right now. Right now is bedtime and I just need to sleep. All right, a couple more. Here we go. Let's see. Does this talking about stress at work with ChatGPT count as a compulsion if you do it every time you have a hard day? I don't know. ChatGPT, a lot of people are using that compulsively these days. A compulsion is something you do to address an obsessive fear, typically. So probably not. It's probably, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you, but you might want to try a therapist because they probably have better, more relevant advice for you, but I get it. I want you to give me tips to sleep at night because rumination comes at night. Yep, same. When I lay down, my mind is loud. I am a big fan. And by the way, this is the last question. Number one, I am somebody who cannot deal with silence because if it's silent, all I hear is what's in my head. And it's always a bunch of things that I don't want to hear necessarily. And they don't help me relax and sleep. So I'm a big fan of white noise. Some people like listening to music when they go to sleep or nature sounds. I just need some nice white noise. I like white noise. It's just like, but helps me. I'm also a big fan of putting on the, what are those called? Those like eye mask things that you wear. Sleep mask. There it is. Helps me because otherwise I just find that I'm opening my eyes and I'm looking around. So, and having a nice sleep routine can be helpful. So making sure that, a couple hours before bed, are you like dimming the lights? Are you, relaxing a little bit? Are you bringing it down instead of revving yourself up with anxiety and then laying down and then you just continue ruminating? So there is that. And a very nice message that says the support groups you have been a game changer for me. I highly recommend. Thank you for that comment. And I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that we were able to answer some questions that we didn't get to answer before. And I appreciate you taking the time and hope that we see you at NOCD in the community and or in our support groups. So So have a great day, night, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are right now.